When you were 5, a single summer felt like it lasted forever. But what about now? Try to remember last week. Really try. For most of you, it's already a blur, but a day from when you were 7 is still sharp. That gap isn't random. It's the reason that by the time you turn 30, you've already lived through more than half the time you'll ever perceive. Not half your life, but half your life as you actually experience it. And the truth is, time didn't speed up. Your brain started compressing it. And once you see how, you'll know exactly how to slow it back down. Here's the strange part. Every clock on Earth agrees that a year is a year. The planet takes the same 365 days to circle the sun, whether you're 7 or 70. The seconds never change length, and yet almost every adult alive will tell you the same thing, that the years are accelerating, that the decades are starting to blur, that they blinked and somehow it was December again. This isn't nostalgia. It isn't your imagination. Something real is happening inside your skull, and 4 different scientists working in completely separate fields have each found a piece of it. Let's start with the oldest answer, because it's also the simplest. In 1897, a French philosopher named Paul Janet proposed something so obvious it's almost uncomfortable. The reason time feels faster as you age, he said, is math. When you're 1 year old, a single year is 100% of your entire life. When you are 10, a year is 1/10 of it. By the time you're 50, that same year is a mere 1/50th, a thin sliver against everything you've already lived. Each year is smaller in proportion to the whole, so each year feels smaller too. The psychologist William James was so struck by this idea that he wrote it into his work in 1890, describing how the years grow hollow and collapse. Run the math forward, and you reach something genuinely unsettling. If you live to 80, this theory says you may perceive half of your entire life before you even turn 30. The first quarter of your time feels like half of it, and the rest is the long, fast slide down the other side. But a feeling isn't proof, so let's make it measurable. In the 1990s, a psychologist named Peter Mangan at the University of Virginia's College at Wise ran a deceptively simple test. He took 2 groups, one young, aged 19 to 24, the other older, aged 60 to 80, and he asked them to do one thing: sit quietly and tell him when they believe 3 minutes had passed. No clocks, no counting out loud, just their own internal sense of time. The young group was almost perfect, calling it within a few seconds of the real 3 minutes. The older group wasn't. On average, they let 3 minutes and 40 seconds slip by before they thought 3 minutes had passed. For the older participants, real time was running ahead of them. The clock had moved further than their minds had. Time was, quite literally, getting away from them. So why does the internal clock slow down? The answer lives in a single chemical. At Duke University, neuroscientist Warren Meck spent decades studying what he called the brain's internal pacemaker, the system that lets you feel seconds passing without looking at anything. And he found that this clock runs on dopamine. When dopamine is high, the pacemaker ticks faster, and time feels like it's crawling. When dopamine drops, the ticks spread apart, and time slips by unnoticed. It's the same reason a boring afternoon as a kid felt like it would never end. Your young brain was flooded with dopamine, and the clock inside you was sprinting, dragging every dull minute out to its full length. Here's the problem. Starting in your 20s, your brain's dopamine levels begin a slow, lifelong decline. The pacemaker that raced through your childhood gradually winds down. Your internal clock isn't broken. It's just ticking slower and slower against a world that never changed its pace at all. And then, in 2019, an engineer found yet another layer. Adrian Bajan, a professor at Duke University, published a paper in the journal European Review arguing that the whole thing comes down to images. When you're young, your brain processes what you see rapidly, capturing and storing a dense stream of mental snapshots every second. But as you age, your neural networks grow larger, more tangled, slower to fire. The signals have farther to travel. You take in fewer images per second of real time. And since your brain measures time partly by how many images it registers, fewer images means time appears to pass faster. To a child, a single hour is crowded with detail, 100 new things seen and burned in. To an adult, that same hour barely registers. The day didn't get shorter, you just stopped taking as many pictures. But here's the part almost nobody talks about, the part that turns this from a sad fact into something you can actually use. Time isn't really speeding up at all. What's collapsing is your memory of it. In 2007, a neuroscientist named David Eagleman wanted to know whether time truly slows in moments of terror, the way people describe in car crashes. So he did something extreme. He had volunteers fall backward off a 150-foot tower into a net below, a genuine free fall. 2.5 seconds of pure fear. On each person's wrist, he strapped a device flashing numbers too fast to read under normal conditions. His logic was simple. If time really slowed down, they would be able to read those numbers as they fell. Not one of them could. Time hadn't slowed at all. But here's what did happen. When he asked them afterward how long the fall lasted, they overestimated it by a third. The terror hadn't stretched time, it had stretched their memory of it. Because in that moment of fear, the brain recorded everything, in dense, vivid detail. And a richly recorded moment feels long when you look back on it. That's the secret hiding underneath all of it. You don't experience the speed of time as it happens. You judge it afterward by how much you remember. A child's summer feels endless because almost everything in it is new. Every smell, every street, every feeling logged for the first time, in high resolution. But an adult's year is built from routine. The same commute, the same desk, the same walls. Your brain, efficient as ever, stops bothering to record what it has already seen 1,000 times. And a year with nothing new in it leaves almost nothing behind. That's why last week is a blur, and a single childhood afternoon still glows. It isn't that time sped up, it's that you stopped making memories, and an unremembered life passes in an instant. Which means the thing stealing your years isn't age, it's repetition, and that you can fight. The writer Claudia Hammond calls it the holiday paradox. A week somewhere new feels fast while you're living it, but enormous when you look back, packed with more memory than a month of ordinary days. This is the way out, and it costs nothing. Take a different route home. Learn the thing you keep saying you'll learn. Say yes to the trip. Meet the person. Put down the phone and actually look at the face across the table. Every genuinely new experience is another photograph your brain decides to keep. And the more you keep, the longer your life will feel when you finally look back on it. You cannot add years to your life just by paying attention, but you can add life to your years. Because here's the truth those scientists were circling from every direction. The summer that felt like forever when you were 5 wasn't actually longer. You were just awake for all of it. Every hour was new, so every hour stayed. Somewhere along the way, without ever deciding to, you started sleeping through your own life, letting the identical days dissolve into each other until whole years vanished without leaving a mark. The clock was never the problem. The clock has always been honest. The real question is how much of what it measures you actually choose to be there for. Time isn't running out faster than it used to. You're just remembering less of it. And the most ordinary Tuesday, really seen, really felt, is still enough to make a single year feel like forever again. Thanks for watching the Unspoken channel. If you enjoyed this content, feel free to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Until next time.